Hello again, this is Gary Hudson from Folkestone Guitars, and you are watching the Truth Guitar channel. Thank you for tuning in. This is my Agile AL2000 guitar that I bought from rondomusic.com. There's a headstock. This is a well-made guitar made in Korea. Nice Les Paul knockoff. Has a mahogany body, mahogany neck, and a maple cap. So it has the same tonewood combinations that you'd find in a Les Paul. Very well done. I'm going to be doing a modification on this, and I wanted you to have an opportunity to hear this before and after samples for the mod. These pickups I plan to leave in the guitar that came with it. They seem to work fine. I would hate to have to extract them and just set them in a drawer somewhere and them not have any use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the electronic mod with a new set of controls here. Now there are two ways basically to modify an electric guitar. You can, as far as the electronics go, of course you can always change the pots and switches and things like that, but I'm talking about a major alteration that enhances or improves the tone of the guitar. Of course, the first way is you can change the pickups. This is often done here. We change the pickups out and we put in DiMarzios or a set of pickups that the customer will have bought online or something to bring to me, and we'll install them. The other way is to change the controls to a set of active controls that enhances the EQ output of the guitar. And yes, it does require a battery, but you're not making this into an active pickup situation. You're keeping the pickups passive, which gives you preserves that warmth of the passive tone, but you're going active on the controls. So it's sort of like getting the best of both worlds. And of course, normally when you just replace the controls with an active board, this is the most economical way of modifying the guitar, and sometimes it's the best way of making a modification of it. Now I've got the covers off the back of the guitar here. I'm going to turn it around and just show you what it comes with. The guitar comes with a set of passive controls, and these are alpha pots. These are the Korean electronic components, and they're quarter size, which is more than I can say for some which just have these cheap little dime size alpha pots in some of the Asian guitars. These are actually the best that they've got to give us, so that's pretty good. It's got pretty good caps in it too. So the controls in these are pretty decent. The switch is one of these Korean switches, and the switch is very clicky. It makes a lot of noise. It works okay, but it's kind of clunky. So we're going to install one of these. This is a Switchcraft, and it's very, very smooth. And by the way, when you go to get a new switch, be sure that it says Switchcraft on it when you're going to replace one of these switches for a Les Paul or SG. It has to actually say Switchcraft on it. I don't know how well you can see that. Yeah, right there in front of my thumbnail you can see the word Switchcraft. There are some switches that are sold by Guitar Fetish on their website that look like this, but they are not Switchcraft, and they are not as good. They're Asian knockoffs of Switchcraft. So you want to be sure and get the real article, and you can order these from Stuart McDonald. And on eBay also you can find them. But this is a full-size Switchcraft. This is the best quality that we can put in there, and it's a nice smooth working switch just like you would have on a Gibson USA Les Paul. Now when we get done with the mod, the battery is going to be in here with the board. The board is relatively small. It's only maybe about 1.5 inches long and maybe 1 inch wide, and it's going to lay in here on a bed of foam, and the battery is going to be directly accessible from the back, so that all that you need to do is just pull the cover off and disconnect the old battery and put in a new one to change it, which means you can change the battery as easily as you can change just one string on the guitar. Basically it's that simple. So we're going to go ahead and do this mod, and then I want to come back and give you sound samples of the active controls, the F29 board that we're going to add to this. By the way, the volume that we're putting in here will be a 50K low impedance pot. And some techs make the mistake of changing out the passive controls and putting an active board in there without changing the volume. They'll leave the 500K or the 250K, however the case may be. They'll leave the old volume in there, and that's not good because that's a high impedance volume and you're working with a low impedance current. So it's better to have everything, you keep the entire signal low impedance right out the guitar. So from the pickups right through the controls and right through the volume, you keep the entire inductance low impedance, which is a very good thing to do, and you'll find that the controls work much better with a low impedance volume pot. So we'll be adding that as well. So next we're going to give you sound samples of the guitar just the way it sits here, completely stock, and then we'll make a clip of sound samples after the modification has been done. I thought I'd give you a chance to hear once again what this guitar sounds like just without any modification. And it's not bad really. I mean it's pretty good. Pickup. Bridge pickup. Now let's move on to the control modification, and I'm going to leave the volume exactly where it is right now in the amp for the next clips, and the camera is just the same distance away from the speaker, so I'm not going to change anything. This guitar is right now been demonstrated with the pots all opened up, and there's just a pinch of reverb on the amp. There's no EQ on the amp. Everything is set in a real good flat mode for testing. So this is what we have right now. Let's come back with the active controls and let's hear the difference. This is known as the F29 board on the Guitar Fetish website, and what you have here are the controls that are for the EQ of the board. This is the bass control, mid-range, and the treble. that I'll be mounting in the guitar. And over here is the 50K low impedance pot that will be the master volume. So I wanted you to get a good look at this. It's a very small board. It does a lot. Great components. It also has a gain boost in the middle. You can take a small flathead or a Phillips and you can turn that and boost the gain. I usually install them so that that is facing up so that it can be adjusted. I rarely ever have to adjust these. In fact, in all of the ones that I've installed, I don't adjust them at all. I leave them right in the position that they come, which is in the center position. Seems to be quite enough gain and beefy enough to do the job on any of these type guitars. I wanted to show you also about the Agile, something I really appreciate. That's the fact that the control cavity is entirely covered with shielding paint. And this is something that you don't see on all Les Paul guitars. You don't see it on, especially on Les Paul knockoffs. It certainly wasn't true of the monoprice paint. That is, and this is a black paint. I have a can of this stuff. It is highly conductive, and it does shield the control cavity here, which is a great thing. Also, the bottom of the cover that goes over this is also shielded. So that's really a great quality thing to have. That's a nice asset. Okay, now I've got the F29 control board installed in the cavity of the Agile 2000. I've got the Switchcraft switch installed. And notice also that there is shielding paint. I just noticed this, that there's shielding paint as well in the switch cavity. This guitar is well shielded. Anyway, I have the preamp board here, and notice I've got foam on both sides of it because I certainly don't want it to touch the shielding paint. I've got little strips of foam there for that. It's got it cushioned in there quite well, and separate from that is the battery, and I've got it laying on some foam. Underneath are the pots down there that you can see mounted to the inside. So this little piece of foam just stays in here like that, and the battery just sits right there, and the lid closes right on top of it, and it stays right there nice and snug and won't go anywhere. So it's quite simple to change the battery in this. It only takes a few minutes. So you just pop the cover back on, and it's resting in there nice and snug and tight. And now we're ready to tune it up and play it, and let's see how it sounds. Okay, now we've got the F29 board and controls installed in the Agile 2000, the Switchcraft switch, and let's hear what it sounds like. Already I can tell you it's much louder than it was. This has I don't know, something like a 20-25 dB gain boost, so you can tell the volume is definitely, the guitar is loud. This on right now is I have the volume all the way open. The master volume that we've now installed, the low impedance volume pot, is all the way cranked, and I have the bass control here, the treble here, and the mid-range here, and these are notched in the center, so you have a center point that for each of these EQs, so you can go either beyond or behind the center point, depending on how much you want to add or subtract from that part of the EQ, bass, treble, or mid. And I really like that. My favorite thing to do is actually to crank it just a notch past the center. My favorite way to EQ the guitar with this setup. But right now I've got it just in the center, so it's pretty much flat, so you can hear what that sounds like. And both pickups are on. is a lot greater. Notice the difference there. Now let's go with the neck pickup. Bridge pickup. Now if I was to take and just crank these a little bit. Let's take the bass for example. Put it in the center. Just give it a little bit of a boost. And then there's the mid-range. And then treble. Really gives you a true full EQ sweep. Now I'm going to play it with the settings about the way I like to have them. Just about maybe a one notch or two past the center. Volume all the way up. Lots of tone. Let's try a little distortion on this. Got my pedal ready here, my Our God by Randall. Let's see what we got in the overdrive department here with the Randall pedal. I'm hearing. If you crank the bass, you crank the mid-range, and the sustain just goes crazy. That's pretty cool. I love the way this guitar sounds now with the active board. I like it a lot better. I like the EQ range. I like the drive that it has. I like the extra punch. And you know, it's not all about drive and punch either. I mean, it has a cleaner sound, a purer sound, just really transparent EQ. I love what this does to the guitar. So I'm going to leave it the way it is and make these available with this board. Pick up. much more EQ. So I'll show you how these EQs work. Here's our bass control. Here's a mid-range. Ooh, I like that. Here's the treble. So I like to put it just a tad past the center in each control. That's good sustain. I mean, this amp is not up very loud. That's a good amount of tone. And I hope you'll be checking us out on these boards for your Les Paul. We can put them in Epiphone Les Pauls. We can put them in Gibson Les Pauls. Any kind of Les Paul. We can put them in SG. Anything with the 2 humbuckers and the 4 control hole setup. We will not put them in the semi-hollow body or hollow body guitars because there's really no place for the battery and the board in there. But for your solid body guitars that have this type setup, basically your Gibson Les Paul or SG, yes, we can put those in, and they do make a great bit of difference. I mean, they can take the pickups you've got, and let's just say they're just average pickups, just mediocre pickups, and just make them sound just tremendously harmonic and have punch and have so much more sparkle in tone. It just greatly enriches the tone. It's like having a microphone. Let's say you've got an SM58 microphone and you just run it straight into a mixer and it sounds fine, but if you run it through a mic preamp and you play with the EQ and you really get it going, you really get it EQ'd and dialed in correctly through a good mic preamp, you know the difference that can make in vocals. Okay, it's the same kind of thing. You've got a great quality preamp here on board with your guitar. You don't have active pickups, you've got passive pickups. Okay, these are passive, all right, which means that you've got the best of both worlds here. You've got the warmth of the passive pickups, and then you've got the punch and the EQ options of the active unit inside. So really, I think this is the best combination. I know there's some people out there that don't like to have a battery in their guitar. I don't know what it is, what the problem is with it. It seems like these same people can have a acoustic guitar with a preamp in it, and all of those have batteries. In fact, I know some of these guys, and they have no complaint about having a battery in their acoustic guitar. And by the way, you can get pickups for acoustic guitars that don't have batteries. But they have no complaint about having a battery in their acoustic guitar preamp. But when it comes to an electric guitar and a preamp, they just, I don't know, I think it's kind of from a tradition of the old days where we had active pickups and batteries that didn't sound so good, and they were too edgy sounding, and they just didn't have the warmth of the passive pickups. I think the other problem is that sometimes the batteries were hard to get to and change. The other problem was
that sometimes the batteries would explode inside the guitar and would leak. Sometimes the player would forget to change the battery, and he'd go to a gig and all of a sudden find out that his guitar quit on him. Well, all I can say to that is these batteries, the battery in one of these guitars, under normal playing that you would do with the guitar, would probably last you like 4 to 6 months. For good measure, I would change the battery if I play the guitar, you know, like every day. I would change the battery probably every 6 weeks, every 2 months, something like that, just for good measure. You can get a lithium 10-year smoke alarm 9-volt battery that will last an exceedingly amount of time. I mean, possibly a year or two that you can use in guitars. And I use those sometimes, especially if I have to put them under a Strat pick guard where you won't be taking that pick guard on and off anytime soon. You want it to stay in there for a while. I usually like installing those because they'll go about 2 years normally. But this is just a normal copper top, Duracell 9-volt battery in this, alkaline, and it'll last me a good while. I'm not really worried about it. Just like you change that battery in the preamp of your acoustic guitar, before you go to a gig or you make sure you got a good battery in there, you make sure you got a good battery in your control cavity of this guitar when you go to use it for a gig. Alright, enough said. I don't mind the hassle of the battery because to me the tone benefit overcomes that. The tone benefit I get with this guitar is so worthwhile that the battery really doesn't bother me that much. I'll hassle a little bit with changing a battery every once in a great while just to have this tone, because I'm not going to get this kind of tone out of just passive pickups and passive controls. If you can imagine a stereo system, okay, that you got at your house, and you've got, let's say that you've got just a tone knob on there. It's something where you like to listen to your favorite music. Let's say you've got just a tone knob, and all that tone knob allows you to do is either brighten or darken the music, as opposed to having an amp with a bass, a mid, and a treble adjustment on it, or just a bass and a treble. What a great difference that can make. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I mean by the enhancement and the great depth of the EQ and the widening of the band you get with these controls. I mean, it's just phenomenal, the kind of boards they make today. And of course they make far better electronics and far better boards for these guitars than they did in the 1980s and even the 1990s. They're improving all the time. And I'm glad that GFS is offering these boards. I mean, I really think they're great. So I hope you'll check these out. Visit us at folkstoneguitars.com. And thank you once again for tuning in to the Truth Guitar channel.